Thank you, Walter, for your very generous introduction. It is appropriate, I think, that you scheduled me on 9/11 because today marks not only the 12th anniversary of the attack on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, but it also represents the 10th anniversary of the first program of the Center for the Study of Citizenship. The history of the center itself was intimately bound up in the events surrounding 9/11. When I mentioned the idea of a center to study citizenship in an informal conversation just a month later, in October, it gained immediate traction and some startup funding, something we academics all dream of, and it so rarely happens. In the wake of 9/11, it seemed that everyone I spoke with grasped the potential of such an interdisciplinary center. I was shocked, and I was introduced to George Dombach, the medical dean, had become a vice president for research, and I thought, well, what could he possibly think about this center as being valuable to the research mission of the university? He invited me into his office and he said, I've been rereading Locke's second treatise. So all of a sudden, my own stereotypes about medical researchers disappeared rather quickly. George, a bit too grandly, thought that the center's long-term significance would be greater than the then proposed Department of Homeland Security. On a more modest scale, the then provost, Charles Bance, his Strategic Initiative Committee provided startup funding for the center. It's appropriate also that I mark the 10th anniversary of the center here at the Humanities Center, because in many ways, as Walter's allusion to my residency in this center suggests, the center's origins were in many respects located in the Humanities Center. It was in the fall of 2002 that Walter invited me to be a resident scholar, and with Walter as my mentor, and with colleagues like Ann Duggan, Alfred Cobbs, and Lisa Vollendorf, who just became a dean in California recently, people always ready to discuss and criticize my latest plan, the center began to move from idea to organization. So I want to take this moment to thank Walter for his quiet mentoring, my colleagues for challenging and stimulating me, and the Humanities Center for giving me essential time and space. Since its inception, the center has grown into a global leader in the study of citizenship. It hosts the leading conference in the field, with scholars attending from all over the world. We just received 2 proposals from a Ugandan scholar, have already received proposals from 2 scholars in the UK, Israel, Germany, and did I say Germany? Germany again, probably 2 scholars from Germany then. The center also sponsors a discussion network for more than 1,800 scholars who hail from more than 30 countries. And we are launching a book series with my co-editor, Richard Marbach, the first recipient of the Marilyn Williamson Distinguished Faculty Fellowship in the Humanities Center, as co-editor of the series, and we expect to publish our first couple of volumes in the spring of 2015. In addition, The center is collaborating with scholars in the health sciences to develop a research proposal on citizenship in public health, and with faculty in the law, business, and liberal arts colleges, along with local business leaders, to advance corporate citizenship among budding entrepreneurs and small business owners. In education, the center also leads the e-citizenship initiative of the American Democracy Project, a collaboration of the American Association of State Colleges and Universities and the New York Times. More than 50 colleges and universities currently participate in the initiative, which examines how the digital age has reshaped citizenship and how digital tools can be used to advance civic engagement. The work on the e-citizenship initiative has led the center's faculty advisory board to embrace the development of what a number of educators have called citizenship across the curriculum. Underlying the idea of citizenship across the curriculum is the understanding that the purpose of public higher education is to prepare students for lives of civic engagement and good citizenship. We can obtain that goal by infusing our curriculum, I believe, with public purpose. Some of you who are not members of disciplines like mine in history, or John Strait and Brad Roth in political science, where the deepening of civic understanding is woven tightly into the curriculum, many of those outside of those departments may wonder how this concept applies to them. Why should many other disciplines include citizenship in their curricula? I don't know. I was going to ask you that today. Actually, I would suggest that the first answer to this question is that public purpose is woven into the mission statements of virtually every professional and disciplinary society. For example, sorry Jim Rigby isn't here, but the mission of the American Chemical Society, 163,000 strong, is to, in the Society's words, to advance the broader chemistry enterprise and its practitioners for the benefit of the earth and its people. Or the American Association of Engineering Society's vision of advancing the engineering profession's impact on the public good. The American Society of Civil Engineers imagines that the civil engineers of 2025 will be, in its words, leaders in discussions and decisions shaping public environmental and infrastructure policy, among other important public responsibilities. Or take the American Psychological Association. Its mission is to advance the creation, communication, and application of psychological knowledge to benefit society and improve people's lives. And the mission of the American Bar Association, Brad, is to serve equally our members, our profession, and the public by defending liberty and delivering justice, while the American Medical Association seeks to promote the art and science of medicine and the betterment of public health. and a better, healthier future, not just for patients and physicians, but for the country as a whole. And all of these associations promote the ethical behavior that is good citizenship of their members. These mission and vision statements might be dismissed as vapid generalizations. But after I wrap up this talk, and I'm going to keep it brief because I'm hoping that we will have significant conversation about possibility and also the foolishness, perhaps, of the ideas that I'm proposing. But for those of you whose academic programs are accredited, I ask you to reflect on whether the reviews of your program considered the public purpose of your profession. A recent conversation with a colleague in environmental and civil engineering has told me that its accreditation review required curricular attention to the public responsibilities of civil engineers. If the introduction of the public purpose of your disciplines helps you to fulfill your professional responsibilities and the expectations of accrediting organizations, it also advances Wayne State's status as a Carnegie Community Engagement Institution. I served on a task force involving outreach to the Arab American community a couple of years ago, and in our first meeting, the university, kind of writ large, was accused by a community member of not being engaged in the community. Clearly and my response was, well, we have the Carnegie designation. But the person's point was well taken. What was there was not known and was perhaps insufficient in a world that needs so much. According to the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, community engagement describes collaboration between institutions of higher education and their larger communities for the mutually beneficial exchange of knowledge and resources in a context of partnership and reciprocity. The foundation continues. The purpose of community engagement is the partnership of public and private sectors to enrich scholarship, research, and creative activity, to enhance the curriculum, teaching, and learning, to prepare educated, engaged citizens, strengthen democratic values and civic responsibility, and to address critical societal issues, and finally, to contribute to the public good. The development of citizenship across the curriculum will both deepen and broaden the university's existing commitment to civic engagement. By embedding citizenship in the curriculum, we also advance Wayne State in 3 other ways. I hope I actually have 3. The first is its commitment to diversity at the university and in society. Such participation, the university proclaims, begins with the ability of higher education to freely assist people of all cultures, races, and backgrounds to develop the knowledge and skills necessary to function in the broader community as responsible, productive citizens. Second, and even more directly, citizenship embedded in the curriculum would help the university to realize its vision for itself as the model public research university engaged in the urban community. In an interview with Crain's Detroit that was published in this week's edition, our new president, Roy Wilson, talked about the importance of taking strides toward making Wayne the premier urban research university. Third, such a change in curriculum will foster the university's ability, in its words, to benefit not only its students, but ultimately the city, state, nation, and world. Civic engagement will not only shape the future citizenry, but will enable, and here I think it's important for there to be a significant audience for this, perhaps in those people who have pre-professional plans, is that it will enable students to become more successful in their career aspirations. The evidence, I believe, is overwhelming that experiential education engenders student success. Students who take service learning courses that involve both service as citizens in the community, but as students reflecting on their experience, those students succeed academically, stay in school, and graduate at rates much higher than students who do not enroll in such classes. The evidence is long-standing and quite overwhelming. In addition, and here I say, in light of Wayne State's apparently small decline in new enrollments, at the same time, Crain's Detroit notices a major uptick at Eastern Michigan and Oakland University, I would suggest that civic engagement may enable us to do a better job of recruiting students for that unique university engaged in the community. Tulane University, which many of us feared for its survival in the wake of Katrina, is now the most applied to private university in the country. Some people attribute this to the fact that application fee to Tulane has been eliminated. But Tulane attributes at least part of its success, and it certainly is central to its stated mission and its recruitment efforts, that students are required to become members of the community. Students at Tulane are required to take 2 service learning classes as undergraduates. One at the introductory level and one in their major. Tulane, in the wake of Katrina and the role that the university, its faculty, staff, and students played in the wake of Katrina has shaped Tulane's identity. And as one outside observer noted, Tulane had made a virtue of civic engagement, helping in reconstruction and all those community service activities that attract a cadre of superbly responsible students. We know that younger students, college-age students, often participate less in the political process than many of us older folk would like. And there is a deep concern about the civic knowledge of, a rightful concern about the civic knowledge of many students. But these students and prospective students have not abandoned citizenship for withdrawal inside their families, their homes, and their friends, but there's a lot of evidence, certainly accrued by the political scientist Russell Dalton, on the deep and abiding interest in contributing to society and making society better, while eschewing the kind of citizenship involvement that we have often found with voting and political activism. Community engagement holds out the prospect of, especially because Detroit's cooled nationally in many respects, as you all know, and it holds out the prospect of engaging that community will help us with recruitment, retention, and graduation rates. Not bad. But there's more. Classes that foster civic skills also meet the demands of our practical, job-oriented students. Such curricular and co-curricular programs provide students with the job skills most desired by employers. Strengthen problem solving, successful collaboration, providing so-called real-life experience, and fostering stronger communication skills. As Secretary of Education Arne Duncan observed in an essay written for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, new employees need critical thinking and problem-solving skills, the ability to synthesize information, solid communication skills, and the ability to work on a team. All skills fostered by purposeful civic inquiry and civic engagement. The Chamber itself particularly laments the lack of what it calls soft skills. Students who might be well trained in the hard skills, the technical requirements for a job, but it writes in its publication Help Wanted, many individuals today lack analytical skills, critical thinking skills, creativity, and presentation skills. They don't plan well, don't work well on projects, don't work well in small teams, and don't communicate effectively orally or in writing. Citizenship embedded in the curriculum will better prepare our students for the 21st century workforce. But there are more benefits for job seekers than the specific soft job skills obtained. Students who are civically informed and civically engaged also help businesses to obtain another crucial benefit: fulfilling a business's commitment to corporate citizenship. And here you might tend to dismiss the idea of corporate citizenship as an oxymoron, that we're simply talking about things like greenwashing and the like. But in ever-expanding numbers, corporations are issuing reports assessing their corporate citizenship. It is true that to some extent, we could dismiss these efforts as marketing gimmicks without substance, or we could say that they're embracing good corporate citizenship because they're driven by profit, not citizenship. And I would say, okay, so what? Corporate citizenship, it turns out, is profitable. And here I'm not talking about what people describe as the triple bottom line of people, planet, and profits. I'm simply talking about profit, because good corporate citizenship helps companies to recruit the best employees, that is, people who understand the broader community in which a business functions. It promotes employee retention. It fosters successful leadership development. It builds relationships with the community or communities in which a business functions. It supports trust in a business's marketing of its products and its services. And it builds trust in the community and will help businesses thereby navigate their ways through inevitable crises. No business is going to get away scot-free. Crisis will happen, and to some extent, good corporate citizenship is a form of inoculation. It also enables companies to foster what folks in organizational psychology call organizational citizenship behaviors by their employees, and which the psychologists refer to as helping behavior, sportsmanship, organizational loyalty, organizational compliance, individual initiative, civic virtue, by which they don't have perhaps an Aristotelian view, but putting the company as a whole as an important part of the way they view their lives and their role in the company, and also a commitment to self-development. All of the reasons why larger corporations are embracing good corporate citizenship practices will lead them to hire people who have necessary technical skills and soft skills, and possess the civic skills that will advance the corporate citizenship goals of the company. What, you may ask, since I've already raised your skepticism, is the impact of civic engagement and particularly service learning on the community. Are these just people dropping into a community to donate their time to the benighted community. The research on this topic, which after the researchers in service learning stopped studying the impact of service learning on students because the evidence of longitudinal studies was so overwhelming, they began to turn to the community. And what they found is that service learning benefits community organizations and the broader community. A regular stream of students provides organizations with labor that enables those organizations to, excuse me, to expand operations in a way that they otherwise could not do. Enables, excuse me, enables them to educate students about their missions and needs, fosters the development of new ambassadors to the community, those students, and creates a pipeline of future volunteers. This is not about Wayne State exploiting Detroit for the benefit of college students' education. We're talking about benefit for both the community and our students and the university as a whole. What is the status of service learning at Wayne State? Now, that's part of the center's project this year as we begin to push for the development of citizenship across the curriculum. My sense is, though, that adoption of service learning courses is sporadic, not systematic, except in, certainly that's true in my department, where we have a couple, but that's all. And the exceptions are the Irvin D. Reed Honors College, and at least some, I suspect it would be close to all of the professional schools that have adopted that. Certainly, it's true of the law school, as our former dean, Bob Ackerman here, can attest. It operates 7 clinics that are directed by faculty, and please, Brad and Bob, correct me for if I misrepresent what the law school is doing, but staffed by students. Although the school views its clinics as bridging the gap between theory and practice, all of the clinics assume civic responsibilities. Certainly, my daughter's participation in the environmental law clinic played a major role in the development of her career. The medical school's approach appears to be even more systematic. It enables students participating in public service to use co-curricular course credit to fulfill one of the student's required electives. It also holds monthly seminars to make the service into a learning experience. As I said, I've not done the research for other professional schools, but I suspect that these are efforts that exist in different places. I know I got my flu vaccine one year from students in occupational health, and have had my blood pressure checked by students in the School of Nursing. I hope to learn a lot more about them over the course of this year. The Honors College, though, builds service learning into its curriculum and makes it a graduation requirement. It teaches students about the city and thereby lays the intellectual foundation for the students' development of their service learning projects. The college's service learning program is a success story, not only for the education of the students in the Honors College, but for enhancing nonprofits throughout Detroit. Study funded by the McGregor Fund demonstrated that. This is a program that in some ways, I believe, needs to be replicated in the undergraduate and graduate curricula across the university. Maybe, and here I will seek your response, having it like Tulane built into one of the general education classes that every student needs to take. And then again in the major. If one of the keys, so much for brief, to embedding citizenship in Wayne State's curriculum is through service learning, then another is through the integration of civic inquiry into every major. Too often, we tend to assume, as I said earlier, that civic learning should take place in courses taught by my department, history, and the Department of Political Science. But now I remind you of what I read earlier of the public responsibilities assumed by each of our disciplines and professions. I'm going to give you two quick examples here of how this can change. One biochemistry professor, distressed by any inclusion of any discussion of citizenship and civic responsibility in his courses, whether it referred to membership in the scientific community or to the scientist membership in any other of the diverse communities that scientist belonged to. And he developed his upper level courses which taught or teach all of the essential content of biochemistry. He did it by connecting the content to major public health issues like HIV/AIDS, malaria and other parasitic diseases, cancer and the environment, all teaching biochemistry in a way that forced students to think about their work eventually as biochemists, as physicians, that the technical knowledge acquired would help them to become not just better citizens, but better biochemists along the way. And this, I suspect, could be replicated in every major. There is scholarship on the relationship between enumeracy and democracy. The importance, perhaps, of scientific knowledge to the citizenry as we address issues of public health. Communication professor, connecting metaphor as a foundation for understanding citizenship. Thinking about civic responsibility in a course on Holocaust literature. Thinking about the relationship of the civic to environmental history. So what we have to engage in is both infusing what we teach with a sense of the public purpose that drove us into our work to begin with, and which should continue to animate us and help us to animate our students. And so thank you. I appreciate your attention.
Because Marc is a colleague of mine and a fellow center director, I hope you wouldn't mind, I'm sure you wouldn't mind if I were to draw your attention to the blue flyer. The Humanities Center is celebrating its 20th anniversary this month. And we're doing it with 3 major events. One is this symposium on truth. It is an interdisciplinary symposium, and if you look at the flyer, you will see that people are scholars from across the country and from across many disciplines are all addressing this topic of the truth throughout that day. The response to this call was so generous that we've had to have parallel sessions. If you look here, you'll see legal scholars, philosophers, and various people. So I'd be grateful if you can put this on your calendar, and if your schedule will allow, attend. Thank you. And now, questions.
Before questions, I would point out that it's already on my calendar, and I'm not booking anything in competition. I just met Lee Wilkins, the new communication chair, and I think she's likely to give an absolutely sparkling lecture, and lots of wonderful colleagues here. Please tell me your names so I can, for those of you who haven't known me for a long time.
Hello, Professor. My name is Gerald Folk. I have a question regarding what you said about connecting metaphor as a tool to understanding citizenship. Could you expound on that?
I'll send you we have an electronic resource. There's a book called Citizenship Across the Curriculum, and each of the chapters provides one faculty member's description of work that they had done in connecting their teaching to citizenship. And in that particular case, what she talked about was that by using metaphor is inherently relational. It compelled students to begin to develop a sense of self and relationship to the university and to the broader community. That grew out of both the use of it, but then the discussions about the significance of the metaphors that they chose helped them or pushed them to to be more self-aware of their position in various communities, hence citizenship, which, by the way, the center treats as membership in a community.
Who's the author of that book? Citizenship.
Jeffrey Bernstein, who's a political scientist actually at EMU, is one of the co-editors.
And there's a link to it, access to it?
Wayne, the library, has an e-copy of it. So if you search for citizenship across the curriculum, you should be able to pull it up. But you probably will have to wait until I go back to my office and close that window. Yes?
My name is Kalima. I'm a graduate student in the sociology department. I'm TAing this semester for Dr. Brewster. And my specific assignment is service learning for the undergraduate students. And the only one comment, as Wayne State further develops this, is that it would be helpful if students had some sort of orientation, some sort of group orientation around service learning, something that would, so they wouldn't feel so like, wow, what am I supposed to do? Can I go walk a dog for somebody? And, you know, that kind of stuff, you know? So I think that would be helpful. And that's it.
No, that sounds, I think, probably first, we need to get a few more adoptions. I'm glad that Professor Brewster has included it in his class. Maybe some of you will help to identify the service learning courses that are being taught in your departments. Obviously, that's important if it's an introductory sociology class. Jen?
I have a whole bunch of things to say, so tell me when to shut up. One thing I think that has to be said that doesn't get said enough is the reason democracy created public education was to keep democracy alive. And that's the purpose of public education, and it's completely missing from the debate, the public debate as far as I can tell, that we're arguing about standardized tests and core curriculum and every other piece of nonsense, but nobody ever talks about why public education was invented in the first place. And it was to create an educated citizenry so that democracy would survive. And higher education is supposed to take that to another level. So when we cheat children out of a public education, we're excluding them from being the active participants in a democracy by robbing them of the information they need to be active participants in a democracy. I find this extremely troubling, especially when it appears that some of the players on the national and certainly in our state scene appear to be trying to kill public education, and I suspect they're doing it for exactly the purpose of eliminating active members of the democracy. And this, I don't see this coming up, and it troubles me a lot that it's not part of the discussion, and I'd like to see people who understand that bring that back into the discussion instead of just arguing about all these ridiculous standardized tests, which that's not the heart of the problem. The heart of the problem is we've lost sight of why we need public education in this country. So that's one thing. Number two thing, I am all about service learning. I previously taught at a university where it was required. It was a religious university, but that was a good context in which to build a service learning program, but I saw the students truly benefit from participating in it. I don't think Wayne has the resources to do it on a wide scale, unfortunately. I mean, we, as far as I can tell, don't have the resources for pencils and toilet paper anymore, never mind service learning. Certainly, I think we should do what we can. I think there should be someone like the Center for Citizenship Studies looking for outside funding for these sorts of initiatives, because service learning is yet another course that has to be taught in a curriculum, and I would love to have one in my department's major. We don't have any faculty left. We're already squeezed so tight. So if we had funding, we might be able to make it happen. But money matters in these things. However, with the resources that we already have, we can teach students to think. And I think we already are doing a very good job of that, but I don't think we toot our horn enough on it. Critical thinking is the skill you need to be an active member of a democracy. And that we're already doing. And I think we do a very poor job of communicating to our students why we think that's important. You know, we hand them a piece of paper, or we hand them now a STARS audit, and we say, you have to fill in all the blanks, and you have to take all these courses. We never articulate to them why. And I think that's a failure on our part. These are just random thoughts, as you can tell.
No, they're not random, they get at important.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're all things that should be considered when we discuss this issue. Another thing I think is also really important I think most departments now are looking at their majors and trying to make them work in a 21st century context. Information literacy may be the most critical thing that needs to be added to these curricula. Again, if we want to create an educated citizenry, people who can make informed decisions, people who want to be a part of the solution to problems, they need to know how to get at truth and get past the muck. And I find that my students, because I talk to them about this, they still haven't learned how to get past the muck.
Well, that's, actually, that's a piece of what the e-citizenship initiative is doing. It's one of the projects which has to do, in effect, I actually like your term better than the one we've been using, which is digital literacy. But I think that that's really where we've been trying to move that conversation forward in an age of information overload.
Right, because it's very hard. You have to put a serious
But
amount of effort into getting past all of that stuff.
Well, I think that the key in so many ways, though, is our ability to connect all the pieces. And what I was trying to do today was to essentially not separate out the world of work and the world of citizenship, that these are, that they belong together, that and that they're not something that if you just train engineers that somehow that's going to take care of the economy. You had, yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I had two. Well, I had one thing to add, but I have two things to add now. My name is Siobhan Gregory. I'm a fairly new faculty member. This is my second year teaching here at Wayne State, and I teach in the area of design and design research. And I wanted to add to your comment about I have a concern about students. I think maybe particularly undergraduate students going out into the community and doing work without ethics training and without their own personal understanding of their own commitment to that project beyond getting fulfilling their own grade and their own course credit requirements. And I bring this up not only because I am doing some degree of, I guess you would classify it as service learning with my own students in design. And this is something that I talk to them about very frequently. Like, don't take on a project unless you're willing to really commit to this and see this through and make sure that it has legs to stand on if and when you need to walk away from it, right? And then secondly, I was just spending the morning with a community partner that I work with on some other projects on the east side of Detroit. They have a community farm, and they were telling, not to sort of rag on anybody, but they were sort of complaining that they had this partnership with some students from Lawrence Tech. Well, now the students have sort of fulfilled their requirement for school, and they're starting to check out and leaving these guys empty-handed. And so as we sort of go out into the Detroit community specifically and promote this work and promote our university as providers of this type of an education, I think it is absolutely critical that we think through this idea of a commitment beyond just coursework.
I think
So,
that
sorry for the rant.
that's not, well, hardly a rant. I think they're thoughtful observations, actually, because I think that there's a difference between the student who is supposed to do 20 hours of community service and someone who is engaged in the community. And what you're arguing for, and here I thought this was an illuminating talk.
I guess we're shedding more heat than.
At least the AC is still on, right?
No.
No.
Everything's off.
That's right.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that's those are actually really important observations, because I think there remain a lot of potential problems, and I think that the kinds of things Chauvin was just describing are the kinds of things that might be embedded in the training of the introduction. So not only are students not like deers in the headlights, but that they can go in better informed, better able to contribute, and better able to learn. Because I think part of this piece is an acceptance of the idea that they're not only there to contribute, but to learn from the community. Barry? Tracy?
I'm essentially very supportive of everything you've been saying. I wanted to ask about your thoughts about how you envision the relationship between the sort of hands-on engagement in service learning and the critical thinking stuff and the deeper cognitive kind of learning, or other kind of cognitive learning that occurs in the classroom. And specifically, maybe from a little bit different angle, I was struck by something you said in passing about students in this generation being interested in community engagement of some sort, but not necessarily in what we might think of as more overt political activism. What concerns me, I guess, a little bit about this, not about the way you frame it or anything necessarily, but just the question that it raises in my mind is whether there's maybe a risk of students feeling that, you know, the way to improve the world is to you know, recycle some more objects or something like that, but not to really engage with the deeper structural causes behind what they're experiencing on a day-to-day basis in their service learning.
Well,
so I just want to ask, you know, how you envision weaving those.
I guess I don't see them as apart from, and it's why I tend to think of this as more civic engagement rather than community engagement. Not that the community engagement is, that it has a political or dimension to it. And I would think that the service learning experience should be one where you bring the real life experience back to the classroom, and where you place in context that experience and examine the deep structures that you're talking about, so that it's integrated. Jenny had to leave, so I wouldn't say, on the face of it anyway, that having separate service learning courses are a good idea, because I think that then you have a tendency to miss all the kinds of things that happen in a classroom. So I think your point is very well taken, but I think that it's essential to have both, because I think that the classroom helps give greater meaning to the community experience, and vice versa.
Could I address that in the context of the clinics that we have at the law school? Because what our clinics try to do, and this to a certain extent distinguishes our clinics from the externships, although externships have some elements of this, is the emphasis on reflective learning, the notion, particularly the notion that what you're learning here is not just a series of disparate tasks, but instead you're supposed to engage in discussions with your clients involving legitimate client objectives, how best to achieve them within the bounds of ethics, and that includes with appropriate consideration of other people who are players in this. So it's not just these disparate tasks, but it's woven together in a plan, and reflection is encouraged both before and after the tasks are completed.
Thank you, Bob. That's, I was hustling and didn't look at I was looking at the clinics, but anyway, thank you for clarification. It's important because it suggests a much more a holistic approach than I suggested, and I think that's really what I'm trying to encourage. Tracy?
What you're describing is actually written into WIN's service learning guidelines, because I designed a service learning course last fall, and there are guidelines for establishing them, and what you guys are discussing are in there, for undergraduates at least. But I wanted to say this notion that maybe you need some ethical training for the students. I think you need it for the faculty too, and I think that's actually a bigger issue. Because I felt like I had to be really clear with the people I was working with that they had student labor for a semester. And if the students wanted to continue to work with them, that had to be something negotiated outside of the bounds of my classroom. It had to be a discrete project. And so, these Lawrence Tech profs, it sounds like perhaps overpromise students. You can't expect them to keep doing something for your course after the course is ended, even if they say maybe they will at the beginning. And so I think that there needs to be sort of guidelines for professors as they're establishing these relationships with the community, because those are going to be the durable and repetitive, and I'm sure this is true with your clinics, right? You've got a clear established relationship, and people know what to expect, and they know how many hours, and they know when they can come, and
Although something that typically occurs in the clinics, and this is not just at Wayne, but at most every law school clinic I've been acquainted with, there are certain hours established that the requirements that the students have to meet, in large part consistent with our accreditation requirements regarding how many clinical hours include, equals a class credit or whatever. The students consistently exceed those hours. And they do so in part because they're really interested in the work, but also because most of them, not all of them, most of them have a pretty strong association with the needs of their clients and the responsibilities to their clients, and they take it very much to heart. And that almost always means putting in more hours than the class technically requires. What the faculty will imbue with them with is the notion of, your responsibility goes beyond what the class requires. You have an ethical responsibility to your client to fulfill the aims of representation.
John?
John Strayed. Mark, what's the action plan for sort of implementing citizenship across the curriculum? How do you align incentives and others? What did Tulane do?
Well, I think that I shouldn't determine that exactly. But what I'm hoping is that this begins both a conversation, first that I think we need to identify what's going on. I don't think we know how much is there. We need to know how faculty are, how they view it as a way, if they view it as successful, important, urgent, we need for them to be able to convey that to their colleagues. And those are, I think that learning doing a little research is going to be essential. The second thing is that I think that there probably needs to be at least departmental discussions. I haven't figured out how we can get it into general education discussion. Certainly, we're going to be revisiting general education. It looks like every new president has us revisit it. But we haven't had significant changes in almost 30 years. And so I don't know what's going to happen, but I think that I'd like to assemble a committee of faculty who are interested in the issue and developing it that can actually help to develop a plan of action. But I think in the general education planning, it should be a piece of the conversation. It needs to be advocated among people who are in charge of recruitment, who are in charge of retention, Corinne Webb and enrollment and management. And it needs to be in the departments, in the discussion of majors and individual faculty members trying it. It can overwhelm everything by trying it. I'm not really convinced by Jenny's claim that we require a vast new infusion of money, but rather using resources that we have to develop things like service learning in our classes. Moreover, the thinking about the civic part of our work, like that biochemist, those are things that we as faculty members ought to be doing, and I think that that needs to be a conversation that is pushed. It's easy for me to push it in history because it doesn't require pushing, or you in political science. But even there, I think that there's a tendency to not step back and address the public purpose of what we're doing. And so that's where I think we need to go. But I don't claim to have the device that will get it adopted, but I'd love to engage you in some conversation about how we can promote it, whether it be in some introductory classes. One of my colleagues in psychology suggested that we try to identify 1 or 2 gen ed classes that everyone takes, and then require something in the major. But even the gen ed, we could imagine having, when we're introducing students to ideas of different disciplines, and the purpose there is much more explicitly to make them better citizens. That's a point where we could be adding that as a university into the general curriculum so that students have a connection. Now, I just made that one up, so I don't know, but that kind of thing where in an introductory math class they do begin a conversation about the importance of innumeracy for citizens. So those kinds of things could be, all the gen ed courses have, you must do these things. And that might be simply one of the pieces of all gen ed courses. So I've gone two different directions, but I'd like to get together about half a dozen, 10 people to see about how we can take this the next step. This is more like kind of shooting gun across the bow, and an announcement to a small but important group. Thank you very much. I would be delighted to continue this conversation. Thank you, Walter.
Thank you.